So we have a couple of announcements to kick things off tonight. Your mentee intake form is due on the 9th, and that's where y'all express some preferences and that sort of thing about mentors. So please fill it out and let us know what you're hoping to get from your mentor. Reflection happens on Fridays. Reflection attendance so far has been pretty low, so just offering a friendly reminder that it is a required part of the program, but hopefully to streamline things. Moving forward, the links will be the same every week, and you'll receive an email reminder on Friday mornings. I'm going to skip for 1 second. To that end, I've been working really hard on a SummerWorks calendar to help everyone keep track of deliverables and those links. So it will have links to all the PDs, links to the reflection times, that sort of thing. So hopefully having it in that calendar format will really help everybody. So keep an eye out for the link to that from Jordan Fisher, but it'll also go up on our Google Classroom. We also have a gift card winner, which is super exciting. From tonight's group, it's LaDacia Greenfield. So congratulations on being the first to submit your executive summary. Well done, very impressive. And it was a tight race. So y'all did a wonderful job getting those things together. LaDacia, a staff member, will be in touch for getting the gift card to you. Speaking of deliverables, if you are not interviewing for an internship, you will be completing a mock interview during the first 2 weeks of June. So just putting that on your calendar that that's coming up, and you'll be receiving more information about that soon. For those of you who are interviewing, you should have received your interview schedule already. And if you have not, if you could let us know ASAP, that would be really helpful. Please keep an eye on your email for communication from employers, and let us know if you have any questions moving into interview week, which is next week. So now we'll talk about what's going to help make you successful at these interviews. So our learning outcomes tonight are developing and analyzing interview strategies, preparing and practicing for interviews, and knowing how to conduct a successful interview and interview follow-up. So the first thing we want to suggest as an interview strategy is to be positive, because that will make you a more attractive job candidate and a coworker. So the more you can keep your attitude up and keep yourself cheerful, engaged, looking at the bright side of things, looking at positive outcomes, the better the interview is likely to go for you, even if that's not your sort of natural inclination. I know for me, that's not typically the way I relate to the world, but it is something I try to put on before I go into an interview. You also want to set goals. So prior to interviewing, take the time to write down where you want to be in 1 year, in 3 years, and in 5 years. And that will give you a sense of what you're looking for from the job, and to figure out if that job in the future is right for you. And then sell what you can do. So know what benefits and skills that you bring to the table, because nobody knows you better than you. And so you'll have to be your own salesperson during this interview to convince them that you're the best person for the job. And then you also want to make sure that you're asking the right questions in the right way. And that's something we will get into in a little bit. So our first big tip is you want to practice the STAR technique. So does anyone know what STAR stands for or has used it before? And if so, you can come off mute and just sort of jump in. Okay. Did anyone see anything in the chat on that?
Oh, I can read it.
Oh, perfect. Great. Thanks, Cameron.
What it stands for.
Sure.
Situation, task, action, and results. Do you want me to read like the, oh, never mind.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. So for situation, describe the event or situation that you were in. For task, explain the task you had to complete. For action, describe the specific actions you took to complete the task. And for result, close with the result of your efforts.
Thank you. So that is a really brief overview of how you should be answering the sorts of interview questions that we might identify as behavioral interview questions. So these are the questions that are asking you what you did or how you handled the situation or what kinds of experiences you have. And interviews these days, more and more, rest really heavily on behavioral interview questions. And if you apply the STAR technique to your answers, you are going to be answering the questions in the way that the interviewer can get the most and the best information from you. So as Cameron pointed out for us, the S stands for situation. So in this case, you want to describe the event or situation that you were in. So if I were, for example, we'll pretend that I'm answering the question, tell me about a problem or conflict that you recently handled. So for that, for situation, I might say, I was working with, if I were in school, I would say I was working with a team of 4 on a project at school in my English class, and we were supposed to write a report about the history of birds. And one of my teammates was not doing their work, and I was worried about getting a bad grade. So in the situation, you're just describing the facts and what was happening. After that, what you would move to is the task. So you're thinking about what is your role. And in that case, what you're explaining, right, is that you were writing a report. Action is where you're thinking about describing the specific actions you took to complete the task. So I might say, first, I tried talking to my classmate about how I was feeling frustrated about her not doing the work, but she continued goofing off. Even though I didn't want to do extra work myself, it was important to me to make sure that the project was finished. So I worked with my other 2 teammates to distribute tasks fairly. And then finally, with the result, you want to close the answer with the result of your efforts. So in the end, my other teammate didn't do his share of the work, but our report still got done. I learned it was important to do my best to collaborate, but ultimately make sure that the job got done. So that way you're saying what you learned, and it gives your employer a sort of preview of how you might handle one of these situations in the future. So the STAR technique is a great way to share your accomplishments and skills without coming off as, bragging too much, and a great opportunity to practice your storytelling. And then I just want to highlight one thing also. You'll notice prepare is listed first, and that prepare is not part of the STAR acronym. Because behavioral interview questions can stay the same across interviews and across interviewers and across sectors and companies, there are really common interview questions, and we will send you a link to some after the session. You can prepare your answers in this STAR format before you even get to an interview. So you don't have to do that like thinking on the fly. These are answers that you can prep beforehand and be ready to go into the interview with all this mapped out. So other tips for preparing and practicing for interviews. You really, really, really want to know yourself and know the company. So knowing yourself means knowing what's on your resume, knowing what your strengths and growth areas are, knowing what your goals are, that kind of thing. This is really important. So especially if you have like more on your resume where you're including some stuff for one employer and other stuff for other employers, tailoring, you want to remember which of your experiences is on which resume and be prepared to talk about those experiences that you've told that employer about. You don't want to seem confused about what you have done or what your experiences are, because that might look then to the employer like you are not being entirely truthful about what experience you have. So knowing yourself and knowing what you got out of these experiences is really helpful. And then you also want to know the company that you are interviewing for. So you want to use whatever sources you can to find out information about the company. So go to their website, go to their social media pages, find their LinkedIn, find press releases they've written, use Google, make sure you're using every tool at your disposal to research these companies. And then use that to shape the questions that you ask at the interview. So when the company turns around to you and says, do you have any questions for us? You can show them the research you've done and how much you've prepared by saying, oh, I read on your website that one of your company values is environmentalism. How does that value impact the day-to-day work at the company? And that way you're showing you're prepared, you're engaged, you know your stuff about this interview, and you're thinking about yourself as a part of that company. And that will really help you shine. And I think with that, I'm handing off to Dallas.
All righty, thank you. Let me just do away with this chat real quick. All right. So, when it comes to clothing and grooming, folks, if we were going to somebody's party, if we were going to dinner with the fam, if we were going to, I don't know, someone really fancy, right? We would want to look good. We want to put that, I'm not even going to say your best foot forward. I don't know what folks call it, but like my parents and aunts and uncles and whatnot, they'll say you're sharp, you look sharp, So you want to make sure you step out, putting that foot forward, whatever it is you want to call it. So when it comes to interviewing, when it comes to maybe not work clothing, but depending on your environment, depending on where you are, it might be one and the same. But suits, khaki pants, button-up shirts. If a tie is worn, the design should be simple. That one, I'm not saying that one is a delicate one or one that's tough to come by. People like to be expressive, especially when they have to frame themselves well, and that means in business clothing. They like to have ties that express more of their personality. At least the first time around, if a tie is worn, solid colors, maybe a simple pattern, things like that. Nothing too flashy. All of that'll be great. Shirt definitely tucked in the pants. I know many people don't really do that too much anymore, but again, you got to frame yourself well, especially in the interview. And yep, I see you, man. Button-up shirt, khaki pants tucked in with a belt. Absolutely. No gym shorts, no jeans. And I see some stuff that I didn't add, but I'm gonna speak on it because I've seen it before. I've actually been in an environment where some people have a collared shirt, right? It might be plaid, which is kind of sketchy, but they'll have jeans. They might be tucked in and then they're wearing boots. I can't stand seeing folks wearing boots at interviews. I mean, if that's what they have, I'm not knocking them. But as much as I know those boots cost, and as much as I know interview appropriate shoes cost, you can buy 5 or 6 pair with those. I'm just saying. But no gym shoes, no jeans, a clean blouse or collared shirt, knee-length skirt or pants, no jeans or open-toe shoes, no short heels or flats, right? The number one rule of everything I'm saying, look like you want to be there. Not at the club, not at the mall. Look like you want to be at the job interview. Yes, that means different things to different people, but that's why we're here, right? If you have any questions, now's the time. Next slide, please. So we have, I don't know, we're going to call that Mike, and we're going to call her Stephanie. I'm just making up names here. We just roll with it, right? So Mike, he's got his little simple suit on. He has his tie. No crazy pattern, right? Looks to me from here, it's a solid color. says a conservative pattern. So if it is, it's kind of a far picture, but hangs to his belt line. Depending on how tall you are, it kind of depends on where that tie is going to hit you. Actually, it's crazy that Shamar isn't in this session with us. A couple years ago, he actually gave Ipsy High School kind of like a how-to on tying the tie. He brought in a bunch of ties from his house, and he had folks put them on, and they all stood up and they all started, you know, tying their ties. Given that he's what, 6'9" roughly, his ties are a little bit longer than most. So to tie one of his ties, it might come down to someone's knees somewhere. I'm pretty sure you can imagine. Even still, dress shirts, solid colors, socks and dress shoes, dark colors to match the attire. No white socks. Shout out to Michael Jackson. Over the calf, so no skin is ever visible, right? And we're gonna look at Stephanie here. She has on a blouse, a little business suit. Keep the skirt within 3 inches of the knees, right? This is a job interview. We're not going to the club yet. We can celebrate afterwards. Makeup is conservative, natural looking. Her nails have a neutral polish. Her hosiery or socks, flesh toned, or a dark trouser, no runs, required with skirt. So these are just kind of, oh, I'm sorry. And her shoes are 1 to 2 inch heels, no flats, no open toes. So we're not saying that this is how you have to dress, but these are just some suggestions. There's 101 people that you can ask. There's 101, maybe even 201 websites you can go to. If you have any concerns about anything in particular, I'm available. You can, bend my ear and I can tell you what I think about it. Or you can just kind of, check it out, Google it, see what they think, see if you could put something real nice together for these interviews. I can go on forever, but I'm not. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this to Jordan Fisher because Jordan Green isn't here. Huh? Jordan, it's on you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dallas. So the next thing that's important when we're thinking about interviewing is practice, practice, practice. So always make sure to practice interview questions ahead of time. And it might seem silly, but when you work through those, it really helps you kind of nail down your thoughts and what you want to convey to that employer when they're asking those questions. So some great examples of practice questions. The first one you'll hear quite a bit, I feel like, tell me about yourself. And this is kind of an opportunity to give what you might refer to or hear as an elevator pitch. So it's kind of where you summarize who you are and kind of what you've accomplished and what you're looking for. And you can look up online or come and talk to one of us about it, but for like further kind of clarification or structure. But there's lots of resources out there on how to do that, and that's just an example of one question. Why should we hire you? Why did you apply for this job? What are your goals in 5 years? Tell me about a time when you had to solve a problem. So when you're and then tell me about tell me about a goal you achieved and how you achieved it. And these are great examples too of ones to think ahead on, because then in the moment when you're being asked these questions, sometimes you can like freeze. And I, have been there where you're like, I can't think of a single situation. Oh my goodness. And that panic kind of sets in. And so when you're working through these, having that example prepared and ready to walk through really just helps you be more comfortable in the situation. So you're not scrambling or trying to think of something on your feet, and really shows the employer too that you're ready and prepared. Why do you think you're a good fit for this role? And then what are your goals for the future? So it's important to not only think about what you want kind of short term from when you're working, but those longer term goals. And that helps the company kind of see how you can fit in, not just, short term, but for, longer periods of time and for potential longer employment. So definitely make sure to take the time to do this. You can do it independently and kind of get your notes put together yourself. But if you have someone who's willing to kind of just walk through it, I always find that super helpful, just having them kind of, do a mock interview, whether it's a sibling or a parent, it doesn't have to be anything super crazy, but just having that like dialogue out loud can help after you've kind of composed your thoughts. So next slide, please. So the next thing is resume and references. So these are also super important things to have ready when you go into an interview. So you might think, I've already submitted my resume when I applied for this job. Why do I need to bring it again? But when you bring a copy of your resume, and it really allows that employer to have it on hand and reference it when you're talking about those experiences. So again, just another point of reference for them as you're kind of walking through it, and it helps them just reiterate what you've accomplished, what you've done, and serves as kind of a reminder of maybe your application. And so it's just really helpful for them, and they might have it, but if not, then you are already prepared and ready to go with it. And you can even point things out as well on there, or use it as your own reference too, and direct them to different points. So it can just be a really helpful tool for both you and whoever's interviewing. And then having a list of people who can speak on your behalf. So this is another super important thing. So sometimes I'll ask for recommendations beforehand, but if they don't, it's not necessarily uncommon to be asked for people who are willing to speak on your behalf or recommend you in that moment. And so again, kind of one of those things of, when they're asking you to provide that information on the spot, you're like, okay, I don't have their contact info. I don't know the correct spelling maybe, and so that just, makes it more difficult for you and challenging for the person who's interviewing as well, because they might have to follow up or circle back around, versus if you have all that information ready to go, then if they ask for it, you are 100% prepared. You can give it to them easy peasy, and that just really helps encourage the process along and show your preparedness. And then it makes it easier for them because they don't have to add another task on their to-do list in the interview process and, try and remember, oh, I need to follow back up and do that. And then again, having it ready right away can just speed that process up so they can take the next steps or next actions on speaking with these individuals sooner than if you have to collect all the information and send it somewhere down the line. And then we will be working on both of these things. So be, kind of prepared for that. But we can answer and dive deeper into more questions about resumes and references and kind of how to prepare them and take them into interviews later this summer. And those will be some deliverables kind of on the horizon. So with that, I will pass it back off to, is it Dallas again? Oh, sorry. I have one more slide, don't I? Or is this? Yeah, I do. That's my bad. I was skipped right over a section, everyone. Really thriving today. So questions for the employer. So typically at the end of the interview, employers will set aside time for you to follow up with questions. And then you might also have questions that you want to ask throughout. So it's really good to just go in beforehand with any questions that you might have about stuff that they've already outlined for you, maybe in the description or on their website, organization, information that they provided. And then it also allows you to kind of ask follow-up questions at the end and really show that you're interested and engaged with this company. So some good examples are, what does it take to be successful at this company? What do you like about working for this company? And could you tell me more about the day-to-day responsibilities of this job? And questions like this really help you figure out what the environment is like, what is required of the job, and kind of better understand the dynamic and environment there, which is just as important when you're applying for a job, that you understand, you know, what you're getting yourself into to make sure that it's a good match, as much as, you know, the interviewer is trying to also determine, you know, if you're a good fit in that role. So it really just, you know, helps provide you with more answers and reinforcement for maybe any questions. And then it also really shows that interviewer that you're engaged and inquisitive about the company and want to, you know, continue being involved with them. And there's a little note at the bottom that says questions should reflect your research, and that is so, so important. So one thing that I really recommend is before you interview with an individual or an organization, just trying to do some basic research on them if you can. So, you know, a lot of times nowadays, most places have a company website that has maybe a little about us or something that you can read up. And sometimes they'll have bios on the staff as well, and you might be able to locate the individual. But just knowing what you're talking about is super important, because again, if you're asking these questions but you don't necessarily fully understand, you know, what the company is doing or maybe what the specific role of that individual is, you know, it might make it more difficult then to ask those questions and really understand what they're saying. And if the website doesn't have as much information, that's also a question that you can absolutely use. But this is super helpful, and I've actually use this in my own life. So before applying for a position that I had in college where I worked for a nonprofit, I did some extensive research kind of on how the nonprofit was set up, because the role that I was going into, I would be doing a lot of behind the scenes like paperwork and that kind of thing for it. And so I really took the time to go on their website and kind of see, okay, this is how they set it up, this is how it operates, and learned more about that like structure. And then when I went in, because I kind of knew how some of the like core operations went, I was really able to ask questions built off that and say, okay, so, you know, I understand that this is a function. I'm curious about how this will look, you know, going forward, knowing that they're looking at changes. And it really just helps engage that conversation, and again, show your interest. And in that instance, it really helped clarify some confusion I had around the role, and made sure it helped me as well as the interviewer make sure we were kind of on the same page about what it was going to look like going forward. And so it was just really helpful for that interview moment to kind of get further clarification for me and for the employer. So now we're gonna have just a quick discussion. What are some good questions for an employer? And you can either come off chat or come off mute, or throw them in the chat if you want. But if a few people just want to throw a question that they could maybe ask an employer in interviews.
One question that I like to ask is, what are the characteristics of a successful employee or a good employee that is currently in that position?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Paris. That's a great example. And I think that definitely kind of ties back to the conversations we had about, you know, what a successful workplace looks like and professionalism last week. So really just kind of checking in and making sure, okay, you know, what are you looking for to be successful? What is required of this role? And then that helps you better understand how you can meet their needs as well. So I'm seeing in the chat, yep, what's the company culture like here? That's a good one. What is the dress code? Company values? Those are all great questions. So yeah, those are some awesome examples. So it seems like some of you are definitely a little bit experts in this. You've done this before, but if not, no worries, we're gonna work with you. But just remember that, you know, asking those questions can really help set you aside from others as well, and make you stand out to the interviewer, which is also something that we always like when we're trying to apply for a job or a position. So with that, I will now hand it over to Dallas again.
All right. Um, so I want to do this one a little different. I'm gonna call it audible. Can I have two people to come off of mute and to have a discussion with me regarding this interview tip slide? Don't matter who it is, but it's a little bit of information, and I'm just thinking maybe from your perspective to kind of speak on it. Just have some dialogue. It might do us all some good.
We can
I
help
can
with
speak.
that.
Oh,
Okay. I heard two voices, and that's perfect. Who are you?
I'm Paris.
Okay, Paris, and who was the other voice?
I'm Rhea.
Okay, Paris and Raya. Can't see your face right now, so please excuse me. So, as a matter of fact, let's start with Paris. Can you read these points?
Yeah. Dress the part. Body language is key. Think positive thoughts. Speak slowly. Don't be afraid to pause and think about the question before responding. The best thing you can do is prepare. Practice makes perfect. Have a hard copy of your resume/executive summary. Ask great questions. And then want more, but I think that's like to the link below.
Right. Okay, so Raya, what does dress the part mean to you?
I think it kind of touches on what you were talking about earlier, like dressing professionally and how you see yourself. So if you see yourself as a professional, I don't know. Yeah, just dressing professionally.
Yeah. So nowadays, particularly last year, leading into this year, right? Virtual interviews are becoming more popular, right? They often are used as a first step or a screening process in hiring employees. It's especially important to put that best foot forward, right? Um, as a matter of fact, prior to, some folks still did like a interview meeting, like an orientation or like a screening process before they got an opportunity to head to whatever company it is, right? Okay, so let's see. Paris, back to you. What are some things you do when you want to feel confident?
I feel like what we talked about last week is dressing the part because I feel like that boosts my confidence a lot. And then just giving yourself like positive affirmations. Like you want to have the mindset that you can do this, you can be successful, and that you are going to get the job. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So portraying confidence and feeling confident will help you do that. Right. And we want to share some tips for doing so in a virtual environment or in a face-to-face environment. So that's kind of where these tabs or these points, we'll say, they come into play, right? Um, okay, Rhea, can you describe to me ways that you portray confidence in an interview?
Yeah, I think by nodding and then responding well to the question shows confidence because it shows that I'm confident about what I'm talking about or I understand what the other person is saying.
Good deal. Okay. Matter of fact, you just hit a good point. So what I'm kind of doing is I'm posing these questions to you, but I'm also going off of some notes. So the first thing, Paris, you were absolutely right. You dressed the part. We've talked about this and we'll continue to do so throughout the summer. Dressing professionally helps you get in the right mindset for interviewing, and it helps you make a first great impression with a potential employer, right? But then Rhea, you kind of hit that nail on the head as well, talking about nodding. So that's all about body language, and body language is key, especially in a virtual interview. Some things that I'm guilty of, and I know I need to do better with, but body language is key, sitting up straight. So even right now, I mean, it might even appear that I'm sitting up and being attentive, but I know that I can do better, right? So if I actually straighten my back up, it appears I'm taller, and I need all the inches I can get because I'm not that tall of a guy. But it just makes me feel more prepared, right? My chest sticks out, my shoulders are square. I look like I'm ready to take on the world, right? Try not to fidget. So sometimes, like for example, I like flash drives not because they hold my information, but because they click and they do stuff and I can pick it up, and it kind of helps me distract my jitters, the little anxiousness I may have, right? Of course, it's not acceptable, especially if I can be seen. Just something I need to capitalize on, a tip I need to take to heart by not fidgeting. And then another thing, and I'm pretty sure both Rhea and Paris can agree and back me up, please, but eye contact, both in person and with your webcam, not the image of the person on the screen. Don't you all feel?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, good deal, good deal. So we're going to, all right, so I don't know who I left off on. I think Rhea, weren't you the last one?
Yeah.
Okay, Paris. So what kind of thoughts do you have going into an interview?
Usually I'm kind of nervous going into an interview, but I'm trying to like channel that into being successful so like being prepared. And then like I talked about earlier, just having like a confident attitude. And usually going into it, I'm like constantly going over the questions that I think they're going to ask me and the response I'm going to give, and also the questions that I'm going to ask them.
Good deal, good deal. So I'll follow up with a point after that. Rhea, what about your speech? Do you practice? Do you prepare? How do you go into an interview knowing what to say or how you're going to say it?
Yeah, I kind of do what Paris does too. I practice what I think they'll ask me and my responses to that. So I do practice how I speak, or sometimes I'll look in the mirror to see how I'm presenting myself. Yeah.
Good deal. You ladies are right on the money. Perfect, perfect. So think positive thoughts. You all have taken a huge step in your own professional development by participating in these webinars. These professional developments and any type of practice that you put and energy and effort you pour into yourself, great job. You got it. Don't forget to speak slowly though. Don't be afraid, excuse me, don't be afraid to take the time to think about your answer. A lot of times those nerves do kick in. A lot of us want to get the information out, and it might just, we might just spew it out really quickly. We need to calm those nerves, have the conversation, slow it down a little bit. And if there's something that we need to think about, like I can even take it back to the STAR technique. Tell me about a time when, ... That might need a little bit of thought behind it, right? Like there's 10 things that come to mind, but which one am I going to give you? So I'm going to calm those nerves. I'm going to, use my voice that I practiced interviewing in the mirror in, or with a loved one or something like that. And I'm going to give you a solid answer. Let's see here. So if you don't understand a question, ask your interviewer to clarify. This is 100 times better than winging it and providing an answer that doesn't address the question because you didn't understand. If they ask you a question and you need a minute to answer, don't be afraid to say, that's a great question. I'll need a second to think about that. Have either one of you experienced something like that?
Yeah, and a way that I help to clarify is sometimes I ask the question back to them. So I'm say like, oh, you wanted me to address blah, blah, to make sure that I'm talking about the right thing.
That's a great segue. In real life, posing that, or hey, that's a great question, it's giving you time to kind of, in essence, it's multitasking. You're kind of playing with the words so you can give them, whatever it is they want to know from you. You're not rushing it, but yet you're still filling that space with conversation. That's awesome. Let's see here. So the best thing you can do is prepare, right? Have your resume or your executive summary with you. This helps during interviews. Personally, it serves as a reminder, right, of all my skills and experience that I want to talk about. I don't necessarily need to, hold it up and read it, because as I've been practicing, as I've been forming, as I've created my resume and my executive summary, it kind of becomes second nature. But again, nerves, 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 practice, practice, practice. You know, with any type of anxiety someone may feel, all of that can go out the window. It's crazy, but it's true. So know what you want in a job, right? When a hiring manager asks you, why did you apply for this position? You need a good answer. So Paris, if I were to ask you, why did you apply for this position? What would you say?
One of the positions I applied for was at the University of Michigan Library, and I would talk about how I really enjoy reading and how I think that my past experience working as an office assistant and answering the phone would allow me to be successful in the position as well.
Awesome, awesome. So aside from being prepared when they ask you questions, right? We all need to ask great questions of our of not, you know what I'm saying. My words escape me. Ask great questions, whatever. It shows you're interested, but it also shows you want to know more about the position. The interview is also your chance to learn more about whether the opportunity is good for you. And if you think about it, not even if you think about it, but if we rewind a little bit, Jordan touched on that on her last slide, I believe, when she was talking about questions in an interview. Same thing, the exact same thing. So everybody give Paris and Rhea some finger snaps for me. They did a fantastic job. I just kind of pulled this one out the air, and I think it led to some great dialogue. Hopefully you all learned a little bit from them, being your peers, from me, just from my experiences. But we can go on to the next slide, please. All right. So this one, this slide in particular, it's not too bad. It's a little lengthy. I'm going to move a little bit more quickly just so I don't eat up too much time. But I would like two more people. And I'm going to speak on some notes that I have. And we're kind of going to talk our way through these points.
I can do it.
I can also do this one.
Okay. Who was talking to me?
I'm Karis.
Karis, okay. And did we have someone else?
I'm Lucas.
Okay. Karis and Lucas. Awesome. 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 I'm glad we got a young man in here. Represent. Whoop, whoop. All right. So, tips for virtual interviews. We'll start with ladies first. Karis, can you please read those boxes?
Yes. Test your technology ahead of time. Set the scene and minimize distractions. Sit down as prepared as possible. Practice but don't memorize. Monitor your body language. Dress for success, including your pants. Try to make a personal connection. And you're great. So be yourself and allow the interview to get to know you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So virtual interviewing is very different from interviewing in person. It can also be nerve-wracking. So we want to talk about specific tips for interviewing virtually. This is even more so appropriate because we are still sort of kind of trapped in the house, but we have, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. This will probably be something that employers might hang on to for a little while, just because from having to be forced to do it, it has taught us what we're capable of, what can be done, what we can do without, etc. Right? For those of you who are not interviewing for internships, you'll do a mock interview We'll provide you with information on how to sign up when we get there, but just letting you know. So with these 8 techniques, there's supposed to be 9, but I actually moved one to another spot. You'll see later. We're going to touch on testing your technology ahead of time, right? So Lucas, when you first jumped on Zoom, as you were getting used to this whole new process, it may not have been an interview, it may have been for class. Did you do any practicing or testing?
I did, yes.
Okay, so what'd you do? How'd you test it?
Usually just by scheduling meetings with my family.
You know, I wouldn't have thought you would have said that, not you in particular, but just someone. I would have probably just tested my microphone and seeing if I could jump on, but that's actually a very, very great practice there. That's amazing. I think everyone should kind of make note of that. If you're on a system or if you're in some sort of chat, maybe like Zoom, maybe not Zoom, and you're unfamiliar, see if you can test it out with a family member. Make sure you can hear, make sure you can speak. You know, you can practice your eye contact. It's kind of like a mock interview, you know, online. That's awesome. So let's see here. Make sure you're set up for success by checking your internet connectivity, confirming your camera and your microphone are working. Make sure your name on Zoom and your profile picture when your video is off is appropriate and professional. Let's see. I haven't had any horror stories about anything of those. Karis, have you seen anyone or had any experiences with somebody who may not have known what to do with the technology or had a crazy name or a picture on their profile?
I've had people think they were muted before and like will be talking or have a lot of stuff going on in the background in like my classes. And so everybody in the class will be able to hear everything that the person is saying before they realize that they're unmuted. And it's kind of just distracting from what the professor is trying to say or what other students are trying to say at the time.
Right, right. I think the mute button is a new classic because no matter how good you think you are with Zoom, we all get caught up maybe once, maybe twice of talking to ourselves before we realize that the mic is muted. Um, and definitely those people who forget to actually use the mute and we hear all of this, you know, craziness going on. It leads to a good laugh sometimes, but yeah, it can be a bit distracting for whatever the lesson may be or whatever the objective might be. So, but we probably shouldn't mess with backgrounds too much or snapping the camera. Make sure these are turned off from from previous meetings. I used to kind of tinker with my background, but before I jumped into something important, we got a notice actually from work with some Michigan Works branded backgrounds they wanted us to use. So in whatever environment we might be, it was always appropriate. But don't procrastinate. We're not going to wait 5 minutes before to test the technology. We should do it as soon as we possibly can. And again, not on the day of the interview. I mean, even if it's earlier that day, okay, cool. But if something needs to happen, some sort of repair, we want to allow time for that. So when you do your practice, Lucas, how far in advance might you do that?
I usually try to give myself 10 to 5 minutes before the Zoom to make sure everything's working.
Okay. Okay.
So like try the link, make sure I have the right password and everything.
So Lucas seems to be a pro at this. The more we kind of play with the technology, the more acclimated we become. Yeah, Lucas gave himself ample time for him, 10, 15 minutes prior to. He makes sure everything works. I'm sure he has everything else down packed in terms of, you know, his presentation, his resume, executive summary, etc. So he's good to go. Yeah, Lucas is in there. So if you need help with technology, don't forget that SummerWorks can help. So if you're a bit rusty with Zoom or something else, if you think some issues might occur, let's try it the day before. You can jump on. I'm pretty sure any of the success coaches or myself will help you do that run through practice that we're kind of going to take from Lucas, because I really like that idea that you're using someone to get yourself prepared. But, you know, we're here for that. So set the scene and minimize distractions. Where do you go, Karis, when it's time to do and talk, you know, important stuff?
If I'm in like an important meeting with somebody, I make sure have my door closed, make sure I text my family to let them know that nobody can come down and, you know, start making noise outside. And I like to have like a pretty clear background behind me, not like sitting on my bed or anything like that, I guess. If my camera's going to be on, and most of the time I just like to make sure there's like nothing in front of me that could distract me or nothing around me that could distract me, and that I'm relatively in a quiet environment, you know, as quiet as it can be being home and on Zoom and everything.
So I feel like you have my notes here because you definitely just covered quite a bit that I have. And I'm glad because, again, I'm trying to move a little bit faster. Find a room with good lighting and few distractions. Eliminate those distractions. Quiet space, room, no TV, silence your phone. Make sure the background is not only appropriate, but background noise, right? Do away with that as much as we can. May it be siblings or something else. Tidy up your surroundings if need be. You could just take whatever's there and just push it away. Nah, whatever works for you. But just making sure our space is nice, neat, and organized. We can all use a little help looking our best on the video, right? We got angles, we got lighting, but let's light up our face if possible. Let's get some of that natural light to come in. I've got a window in front of me and a light overhead. So depending on what it's doing outside, I might turn the light on like I have because it's a little gray out. Let's see. Angles, raise your camera. The best camera angle is head on and at eye level. So any table likely below eye level. What's that say? Any table? I'm sorry. Any table is most likely below your eye level. Try using books or something else to prop up your computer. I don't do that, but again, I'm not the tallest man ever. So the table I'm sitting at in my chair, bam, it puts me right on. And I'm pretty comfortable. So comfort is also something that we need to consider because we're going to be sitting here for whatever time that is, and we got to focus, right? So I think we're on you, Lucas. Hi. So my third point, it says, sit down and be prepared, right? What do you do when it's actually time? Let's say you tested your technology for your 10 and 15 minutes. It's go time, Lucas. What do you do?
So I will usually have something, either a notepad or a document pulled up, which I can take notes on, whether it's for like professional development or class, or I'll probably be doing it for interviews as well.
Awesome. Awesome answer. So when you sit down for the interview, be prepared, right? Just because we're at a computer doesn't mean we're about to be Googling our life away. So Lucas said that he has notes. He keeps a notepad, something to jot some things down. So if he's talking school or if he's talking some other arena, I'm sure he's done his research. We've been hammering home today, researching the company or the job, the person doing the interviewing ahead of time, right? It just shows our readiness. It shows that we're prepared. We have our resume, we have our executive summary. We use it as our little cheat sheet, not to really read from, because who knows, that's better than ourselves, right? So my next point, practice, don't memorize, right? So Ms. Karis, what are your, I don't want to say best practices, but how do you prepare when it comes to practice?
Usually, if I'm speaking in a professional environment, I try to make sure like I take notes before on the main points that I want to hit, but I don't like write out a speech for what I want to say or anything like that. But I like to write down anything important that I want to talk about, stuff like that on a piece of paper before, so I have it off to the side to reference. But I also like to speak in the moment, so I'm not just monotone reading something word for word. But I think it's good and it's easier if I have something to reference going into it rather than just everything coming straight, I guess, out of my head in the moment.
So both of you guys are on fire right now because you keep talking about all my points. Practice answers to some common interview questions. Don't memorize them. You want to sound focused, but not robotic during the interview. You want to sound genuine. And if you sound like a recording, it may not come across, that way, right? Practice with friends or family. It might be awkward, but it helps you practice and mistakes. And you can make these mistakes in a safe environment so you can be better prepared for the real thing, right? Let's see here. So remember body language. Monitor that body language. Tell me, Lucas, when it comes to body language, I mean, sometimes we realize it, sometimes we don't. Some people talk with our hands. I realize I need to, straighten my back as I sit. Are there some things that you need to capitalize on, or are there any tips? that you make sure you hit every single time that you know so you can be ready?
I think usually the biggest thing is eye contact, because it shows that you're engaged, and additionally, using like even just small hand gestures shows that you're being active in the conversation and that you have energy to put forward, like you're excited about it.
Yes, yes, yes. So the normal interactions that you'd have with a hiring manager during an in-person handshakes, things like that, right? Those are lost in a virtual setting. So hmm, what you can do, as you say, is monitor your body language. You really spoke on the eye contact. So in lieu of a handshake, me giving you and you giving me that undivided attention is kind of that respect that a handshake gives. It lets me know that you're there. You were talking about being active and engaging. That's perfect. You know, sitting up straight, again, smiling is great. Keeping your camera at eye level just so you know it looks and it feels like we're speaking to each other. Don't forget to maintain that eye contact. Boom, it's all over the place. It may feel awkward, but try your best. Research shows that employers are more likely to remember what you said if you maintain eye contact. Keep your focus on the camera while you're talking, not the image of the hiring manager on the screen. So we're hammering these points home. Miss Karras, virtual interviewing, dress to success or dress for success. What do you wear?
For me personally, when I get ready for an interview, back when we used to have in-person interviews, I like to make sure I was wearing a nice pair of dress pants, nice shoes, and like a nice blouse with it. And make sure my hair was all presentable, and if I was wearing any makeup, keeping it light and so it's not taking away from my professionalism. In virtual, I haven't had any virtual interviews yet, but I kind of have a go-to interview outfit that I like to wear. So I think that even though we're on Zoom and you can really only see from so far up, getting dressed in an entire outfit and making sure you're in that mindset that you're going into an interview as if you're going into an in-person interview, is really helpful for just setting the theme of professionalism. So I think that's what works in virtual interviews.
Okay. Follow up question. How far in advance do you do that?
Pick out the outfit, I probably do it a week in advance. I don't like procrastinating to do stuff like that. Just make sure everything is set out so I don't have any last minute issues where I'm like, oh, these shoes aren't as professional as I need them to be, or I need to go buy pants, or I need to go buy a new shirt. I just like to have it all out of the way beforehand and making sure everything's ironed and there's no stains or anything like that that I would notice like a couple days before that I would then have to like scramble to fix.
Awesome. Awesome. She gave herself ample time, folks. A week may not be the selection for some of you, but anytime prior to your interview, awesome. She just gave a really, really detailed plan of attack. So if some of you are wondering, take Karis's advice. She starts early. She makes sure everything is everything. So yes, 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 indeed. Great answer. You might be sitting next to your bed, right? But please don't look like you just rolled out of it. I'm telling y'all, y'all don't want to see what's under this hat. It took me a little minute, but I got it, and hopefully I look well enough to be speaking with you all today. Dress like you would for an in-person interview. Professional clothing shows you're serious about the position, and it helps you feel more confident, right? So please don't pull up your Zoom interview. This was a reference that was used before, but for those of you who know who Ezekiel Elliott is, and you know his particular style, he has the crazy hair. He's a football player, but you might catch him on the field. He's in shape. He might have a crop top on. He has the beard, all of that stuff. He doesn't particularly dress like one would for an interview. So when you get some time, look up Ezekiel Elliott and don't do that, right? Business on the top and comfort on the bottom is also not the way we're going to go. Some of us might have on a shirt, a tie, and some hoop shorts or jogging pants. You know, we want to feel it. So we want to put on our whole ensemble, put on the whole shebang. We want to make sure we feel the way we look. So as we're talking and as we're handling business, boom. All right. So Lucas, make a connection, right? Try to make a personal connection. If you were on an interview with me, what would you say? What are some go-tos that you use for making that connection?
Well, a good thing to do is to, whenever you're explaining something, you always want to start from common ground. So if I were to want to talk about my experience with a certain volunteer work, I would start by saying something, explaining like what it is broadly, or comparing it to some other organization that's more well known, in order to sort of build that foundation.
Good deal. Good deal. He's right. So what I did, one of my most memorable connections, I used to live in Atlanta for 6 years and I worked at a bank. I worked at Wells Fargo. For those of you who might be familiar with what Wells Fargo is, my manager, she was Puerto Rican. And let me see, at this time I was maybe 24. A couple years prior, I had taken a trip to Puerto Rico, been to a few cities over there. And the fact that I had that knowledge and I was able to, kind of make the mental connection, hey, she's Puerto Rican. She might actually be from. And so I brought it up and we had this whole conversation just about vacationing in Puerto Rico and where she grew up. This was my second time interviewing and we talked absolutely nothing about the job. The fact that I was able to hold a conversation with her, that I was able to be personable, that I made that connection. She was like, I remember you from last time. Great conversation. Don't worry about it. We're going to hire you. And it kind of caught me off guard. I'm sitting there. I had my binder. I was dressed to the nines. I'm like, okay. And I kind of let a nervous laugh out. She laughed too, but that's what did it for me. It was crazy, but that's what it was. So you might be the last name on a long list of individuals, right? But you want to stand out. You definitely want to stand out. So don't be afraid to be personal. Share that story. Sometimes sports works. Sometimes the weather. You kind of, at this point, it helps to think on your toes. They might have Detroit Tigers stuff on the wall behind them. And before you kind of get to business, hey, the Tigers, they're doing such and such this year. Granted, it might not always be a pleasant conversation because the Tigers aren't always doing their stuff, but whatever. Most importantly, be yourself. Be yourself. So, Karis, Lucas, being yourself, what does that mean to you?
I think to me, in an interview, being yourself, I think it looks like not only just like, I guess, reading off your resume, like I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and I've done this, but also talking about why the things you've done are important to you, like your passions. And if you're talking about something that you've done to in an interview, I think explaining like why you chose to do this, why it was important to you, and just like the effect I guess it had on other people is a good way that the interviewer can understand like why this specific, I guess, accomplishment you made was important and why you're passionate about it. So I think that's a good way for an interviewer where you're only talking for maybe 30 minutes to get to know you a little bit better than if you were just reading off your accomplishments and kind of just leaving it at that.
How about you, Lucas?
I think it means sticking to your strengths. So if you, for example, aren't very good at public speaking, you might want to have like some cue cards on hand, or you might just not want to apply for a position that would take a lot of public speaking, like a cashier. Uh, and another thing is you would want to, I'm struggling to find the words for this, but you would want to portray, you don't want to make yourself seem better than you are if you can't follow through on that. So you want to make sure that you make very clear how you can contribute.
Awesome. Thank you, you two. Thank you. Thank you. So a key task for the hiring manager, right, is not to see per se if this person can do this job, because they can teach you the job. That's where, entry level opportunities come from, because they don't expect whomever the candidate is to know a whole lot about what's going on. I mean, of course it helps when you have experience, but that key task is can not considering, but is finding out if the candidate is a good fit, right? Office culture. Definitely. You applied for the job, so they know you're interested, right? They know you want to get paid. As it can be difficult to express yourself through a screen, depending on that conversation, don't be afraid to kind of, sprinkle some whomever on those answers. So I'm gonna sprinkle a little Dallas on those questions. Um, I might give my personal feeling about, let's say, sports teams. It could be about LeBron James. Half the world is in love with LeBron James. Dallas is not necessarily the biggest LeBron James fan, right? So right there, that kind of sparks up a bit of a debate. It tells whomever that I'm speaking to, okay, he has an opinion on it. He knows how to communicate it. He, has a stand-up answer for da 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 da. And then we kind of have this fun conversation that might be telling them everything that they need to know about office culture and whether Dallas is a good fit. Another way to show this, let's see, provide an example. Let's see here. Provide an example of success coach interviews. Nope, I'm not gonna do that. So another way to show interest, right, outside of having these small talk conversations is to ask great questions, right? So let's see. I actually have an example here. During phone interviews, one of your success coaches referenced the SummerWorks website and mentioned it says that we try to adapt the program each year based on what you all see. They asked what new changes were being implemented this summer. This is great because it's both thoughtful and it conveyed that there was interest enough in the program to do research, right? To look at the website, to see what we're about, to see what SummerWorks is doing, to see what the partners are doing, different things like that. I'm gonna end it with this because I know I've been speaking a mile a minute, but the best question that I've got that portrayed that interest that I just kind of gave that example for, I was doing an interview and whomever, it was a candidate, a young person, asked me where I saw myself in 5 years. And I absolutely was not expecting that. Not only because I was a little older than they were, but I'm being seen as the interviewer. And it was great. I wasn't ready for it. It made me smile, and it showed me that that candidate kind of put some real thought into preparing themselves. All right. I'm going to go ahead and pass this on to Zoe.
I don't know if I would be ready to answer where I see myself in 5 years. So if you all asked me that, it would definitely throw me off. So I just want to emphasize real quick, just to Dallas's point, as much as the organization is seeing if you're a good fit for them, you should also be on the lookout to see if the organization is a good fit for you, So kind of keeping an eye out for different clues and things like that, like asking questions about the work culture, like, oh, are we going to, what kind of, do people tend to stay until the work is done? Do people tend to take vacations, things like that? Being conscious of, you don't want to look like, oh, all I care about is taking vacation, but you can kind of get a sense of if it's okay for people to take breaks and things like that. So just wanted to emphasize that as well. So Dallas has done a great job at talking to you all about all of these different things. So we're going to go kind of fast through this next slide. You can go to it, Olivia. So you all are basically experts at this point, right? I think a wise Dallas once said, ain't nothing to it but to do it. So as we've said, do your research, make sure that you do your research on the interviewers, the organization, reread the job description. That's an area where I think sometimes we might forget different things, but just making sure that we have a good idea of what the job actually is going into the interview.
So then next, practice your answers. Like I've dropped in the chat, the success coaches in Dallas are all available for you all if you want to practice before your interviews next week, or for any interviews that aren't next week. If you all get another job interview throughout the summer, we're more than happy to help you all practice for those. So, and like it says here, you know, not every interview is going to look exactly the same, but you can definitely have answers prepared for those common interview questions. I actually had an interview once where it really threw me off. They asked me, oh, you know, can you walk me through how to do a really complex formula in Airtable? And I was like, I know the software, but I do not know how to explain it. So it just kind of gave me context for, oh, here's something that I could be thinking about in the future. You know, what different software does the organization use, and do I know how to use it? So. And then, as we've said, look the part, you know, dress for success, things like that. We're happy to answer any questions if y'all have any. And then stay calm, you know, like Anastasia was saying, you know, take deep breaths, make sure that you're speaking slowly and clearly. And then lastly, ask questions. I think I put this in the chat, but the worst thing you can say to an interviewer is no when they ask you if you have any questions. So just make sure that you all have those great questions prepared. We recommend having actually like 5 to 10 questions prepared, because sometimes the interviewers will answer your questions as they're going through. And so you don't want to be caught without having any questions at the end. So I think that's it for now, unless anyone has any questions, but we can go ahead to the next slide, Olivia. All right, interview follow-up. If you have not been listening to anything up to this point, please do listen to this. Bottom line, thank your interviewers. So within 24 hours, please send individual emails to the folks that you met. So for example, when I interviewed with U of M, I interviewed with Jordan Green, Sarah Saylor, and Julia Weiner. And so what I did was I sent all of them emails with different specific things that we talked about or points that they made, just to show that I was really paying attention and that I was interested. So on that note, do make sure that you get their contact info, because I didn't know Jordan Green's last name. And so I had to guess because there were multiple people with the last name. So don't do what I did, but just ask them up front. Just say, oh, I'd love to follow up with you afterwards. What's your email address? Do you mind if I follow up? So, and then lastly, just employers will remember that you thanked them. So it's kind of funny, like I remember which of the success coaches sent thank you emails last year, even though they're not working here anymore. I also remember this year, there were a couple people who interviewed who we didn't end up hiring, but I remember who sent thank you emails. So it can never, ever hurt you to send a thank you email. It's also like, it doesn't just show the interviewers that you value their time, it's also an opportunity for you to kind of restate your interest and your value as a candidate. So you can kind of say, hey, like I'm really excited about this position because XYZ. And it also gives you the opportunity to kind of clarify any answers that you might have given where you think, oh, maybe I should have added a little more detail, or oh, maybe I want to change this a little bit. So for example, I had an interview with the Career Development Center a while ago with U of M, and they asked me about, you know, oh, what student development theory would you use in this case study? And so I gave them an answer. And then I remember in the follow-up email, I said, oh, I chose this particular theory because this was a student of color and things like that. Just because I think that, you know, there's lots of theories that don't take identity into account. And so I just kind of wanted to clarify that for them. So that's what I did in the thank you email. And they actually replied and they said, oh, like, we really appreciate this additional perspective. So use that thank you email to your advantage. And I think that's it for now. We are actually going to move on to some videos for you all. So if you have seen these from last year, I apologize, but they're oldies and goodies. So we're going to have an example of a bad interview. So maybe if you all could just drop in the chat while we're watching, what are things that Shamar here could do better? What's not going well? So I'm going to hand it over to Olivia to hit play for everybody.
All right, Mr. Heron, thank you for
it worked. Thank you
today for this interview. I saw your resume, very professional. And so I suppose
my cousin wrote that for me.
Oh, well, you know, it's always nice to have help. And if you could you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I could.
And
what if I don't feel like it?
Could you maybe also remove your, I believe those are sunglasses? Although stylish, it appears that the sun is coming in like towards your back, in which the sunglasses, they're a move that doesn't really make sense given this scenario.
I see you guys are pretty strict over there, huh?
You know, we try to be.
All right, let's do this. Tell me, what was your question, sir?
Could you tell me about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Shamar. You know, I like to do stuff. You know, usually I do it just so that I get it done. I really don't always put the best effort in, but at the end, I clean it up and make it look really good. So that's one of my good skills is, you know, I guess some might say slacking. I say being innovative and creative. Another thing about me is, you know, every chance I get, I like to spend money. You got to be able to have fun in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Life is about having fun. This work stuff, man, the only reason I'm doing this is because my mom told me if I don't figure it out, she gonna kick me out the house or at least make me get off the couch.
Okay. So being innovative, being creative, those are all things that we can work with.
Hey, hold on 1 second. Hey, Mom, don't put no cheese on my cheeseburger, okay? No cheese. All right. Yeah.
Mr. Herring, you should be aware that when having a cheeseburger, the cheese is part of that. Could you tell me why you're interested in this?
Mom, don't put no ham on my hamburger either.
Mr. Herring, could you just kind of let me know why you're interested in this position?
Mr. Koba, I just told you I'm going to get put out if I don't figure out how to make some money and not play 2K 16 to 18 hours a day. Okay. So I got to figure this out. And your company, you had a cool logo. I like you guys' logo. So I called my cousin. I said, hey, make some stuff. I mean, can you help me write a resume that makes a lot of sense so that I can go work and not get put out and absolutely still play 2K. But I read the job description and some of the stuff. I think I could do moderately well.
Okay. Well, could you tell me about a time that you had to make a tough decision at work or in life?
Great question. So I'll tell you about the time, you know, my coworkers, they were like, just leave. They won't even know that you left. And I'm like, you know what, you're right. But then there was a little voice inside of me that said, don't go anywhere because your manager will be looking for you. So I made the tough decision to not leave work early so that we could go play some more 2K. So I could have like just went and left work, right? You feel what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like I could have left, but I used, you know, thinking because I need money so I don't get kicked out of the house so I can play 2K.
Yeah, and we do strive to have all of our employees, as you said, use thinking. That's pretty important around here.
The mentals, you got to use them.
Got to use them. Yeah. Well, I think we're almost done here. But do you have any? Nope. This is virtual. I can't smell anything about
that. Might be me then, right?
Probably. It's likely that it's you, given the situation.
So quarantine out here. I'm just in the house.
Yep. Here. Absolutely.
Can't nobody else smell it. I'm gonna just keep it going.
Well, do you have any questions for me before we finish things up here?
Do I get paid for this interview?
No. No, you do not. All right.
Can y'all help me with my cell phone bill? Like right now, because my minutes is getting low.
So the way we do this is when you work for us, which I wouldn't count on right now, we give you money, which you can then use to exchange for goods and services.
Interesting concept. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Well, it's just one way to do things. All right, Mr. Heron. Well, thank you very much.
Well, hold on, I got more questions.
All right.
Where'd you get that tie, man? That's a nice tie, brother.
I got this at Goodwill,
Okay.
specifically the Goodwill in Saginaw, Michigan.
Fair enough, fair enough. You think they hire?
Yes,
Okay.
a bit of a commute.
If I could do modestly a good job, you think they'll hire me?
Based on this interview, no.
Oh,
But
so what you're saying is I didn't interview well?
that is correct.
Is it the T-shirt? I should have wore my He Got Game T-shirt.
That would have
That had
actually,
helped.
that would have been an improvement over the current T-shirt.
Okay, puke green isn't my color. Duly
Maybe not.
noted. Duly noted. All right. Last question.
All
How
right.
much y'all
shoot.
think y'all gonna pay me for this job I'm about to get with y'all?
I don't think that we're going to pay you because at this point in time, we don't intend on hiring you.
Well, that's discrimination, isn't it?
No, you had a very bad interview. And I believe
Hey,
you mentioned
man,
your cousin wrote your resume. So
some chicken. Yeah. No, yeah, he did write it. And you said
Okay.
it was a good resume.
Yeah.
At the beginning, right? So, all right, man. I mean, when do I start?
you don't.
Oh, all right. Well, can you refer me to somebody?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I'll come work for you.
Hard pass. But
All right.
we talked about the Goodwill in Saginaw, Michigan.
There's a
Maybe
but.
that's an option.
All right. Well, I don't got a car, so
Well,
maybe they'll let me work virtually.
maybe.
Welcome to Goodwill. How may I help you?
They'll just have a computer monitor out front.
Boom,
Just great.
done.
Too
I
easy.
like it. All right. Man. So I'll see you on the first day of work, man. Have a good day.
All right.
All right. So you all were dropping some fire comments in the chat. Shamar definitely did not do a good job on that interview. So whatever you all do in your interviews, don't do what Shamar did. We have one more, it's slightly shorter video, and then we will let you all go. So we're going to talk about, Dave and Drew, success coaches from last year, are going to show you all what a good interview looks like. So we're already doing better with a polo and not a t-shirt. So think about
SummerWorks participants.
just think about, what is going well, what is Drew doing well, and drop it in the chat like y'all just did. So go for it, Olivia.
Today, Drew is going to be interviewing me for a fake position as a school health coordinator at Bullet Creek School District. And hopefully this is going to be an example of a good interview.
Well, hey, welcome, Dave. Thanks. Thank you so much for coming in and interviewing for the health coordinator position here at this university. I really liked your application. So if you're ready, I think we can get started with the interview portion. All right. So Dave, my first question to you is going to be, tell me about a little bit about yourself, if you could.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity to interview here today. So I graduated high school in 2011 from Bullet Creek High School, wanting to help people. I then went to college to study education. While in college, my freshman year actually, I started a wrestling program at a Title I school at a local middle school. In 2013, I joined the Army Reserve. And then in 2016, I graduated and then I coached and I taught at Dow High School in Midland for 3 years. I left teaching in 2019 to study public health and educational policy at the University of Michigan. Currently, I volunteer with the American School Health Association and host a podcast about school health. I believe a school should be the healthiest place in the community and that all children are entitled to an exceptional education. And I've really devoted my life's work to making that happen.
Thank you for that, Dave. I really like that response. So my second question for you is going to be, why are you interested in this specific position?
So I'm really passionate, as I hope I've gotten across already, about school health. And I know rural districts really face unique strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats compared to urban schools. There are vast educational and health inequities that are present in Midland County. And I'd really cherish the opportunity to work with district staff, parents, and community stakeholders to help narrow those gaps.
Okay, thank you. So in this position, you'll have to, you'll be faced with some tough decisions at times. So knowing that, can you tell me about a time that you had to make a tough decision while you were at work?
Absolutely, my pleasure. So I was new at a roofing company in 2011. So towards the end of the Great Recession, when we found out that everyone was getting laid off at the end of that project. And so everybody except for me quit like right on the spot. And so I was the only employee left in the entire branch that was just like a laborer. And so my team was supposed to get the materials ready and drive them to the job site. So everything that you'd need to take off an old roof and then all the materials for the new roof. And so I loaded up the truck and I started on my way. And I called the branch manager on the way and just kind of updated them on what was happening. And then we got the job done. It was the branch manager, all the salespeople, and myself, and we got the new roof on. And I was given a $5 an hour raise for that entire project. And then that raise continued, and I was brought on as a foreman with the branch manager's new company. And that company is still going today. In fact, it cleared 7 figures last year.
Wow. Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Okay, so that's all of the questions I had for you. Again, thank you so much for coming in. Really enjoyed talking to you just now. So yeah, last thing, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, actually, so I saw that your website doesn't list anything about school health currently. I was just wondering if there are currently any programs or initiatives underway.
So yes, and that's part of why we want to bring you. We want to bring somebody in for this position because those things are in progress, are in the works, but we want to make sure that they are as fleshed out and as quality as possible before we start implementing those initiatives and resources.
Wonderful.